The camera was rolling, the hole in the ice was ready, and the mother said, "I'll go first." But she never came back. There was no scream, no splash, no trace, just silence. The kind of silence that feels like something watching, just beneath the surface. Her 2 kids were right there. Her husband tried to jump in, but something stopped him. And what that camera captured wasn't a ritual, it was a disappearance. A woman swallowed by a frozen river during a spiritual ceremony, while her family stood there, waiting for her to resurface, waiting for a miracle. But the miracle never came. Hello everyone, I'm Leon Graves, and you're watching The Inkpath, where real stories are told in the voice of the coldest truths. If you're someone drawn to the hidden mysteries behind seemingly ordinary lives, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because this week we're taking you deep into a tragedy that unfolded on a winter night so mercilessly cold, it may still be unfinished. Her name was Emily Walker, 40 years old. Alongside her husband David and their 2 children, Jason and Lily, they didn't come to this place for vacation. They came to participate in a spiritual cleansing ritual on the night of Epiphany. No crowds, no churches, just family, nature, and God. After weeks of searching, they found a frozen river deep within the woods, a stretch of untouched snow that ran to the horizon. David handled the setup. Emily arranged the camera. Everything was carefully positioned, as if they were trying to capture a moment meant to last forever. She didn't know that same camera would also capture the final moment she would ever stand among her loved ones. No other families were there, no footprints in the snow. And that stillness, that perfect, almost holy silence, only made Emily believe even more. This place was chosen by God, she said. But Emily didn't know, and neither did anyone else, that this ritual wouldn't just purify the soul. It would become a gateway, leading someone beyond this world, never to return. You don't have to be scared, Jason. I'll go first. Then you'll see there's nothing to worry about. That's what Emily Walker said, resting a light hand on her son's shoulder. Jason was shivering, from the cold, and from something else. That was how David, her husband, remembered it. His voice cracked as he told the story. Not just from grief, but from the weight of what his eyes witnessed that night, a weight that never left him. After everything had been set, the flashlights secured in the snow, the camera perfectly framed, Emily walked over to the children. Jason, 10 years old, bit his lip hard, trying not to cry. Lily, 6, pressed her face into her brother's coat, part from the cold, part from fear. David stood nearby, holding a thick towel in both hands, watching his wife kneel down to meet the children at eye level. She didn't rush. In minus 10 degrees Celsius weather, surrounded by fog too thick for the lens to fully cut through, Emily, mother and spiritual guide for the evening, somehow had the calm to sit there, smiling, her hands wrapping gently around theirs. "You know," she said softly, her breath painting silver rings in the air, "this ritual, it's not just about bathing. It's how we tell the darkness that we're not afraid, that our faith is stronger than anything waiting out there." Jason asked in a whisper, "Does it hurt, Mom?" Emily shook her head, then gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "Not like you think. It's cold. So cold it feels like crashing into a cloud made of ice, but it won't hurt you. It'll wake you up." They weren't sermons. They weren't rehearsed. They were the kind of words a mother says just before something changes forever.
"I worked with Lily a few weeks after the event," she recalled. "She didn't remember everything, but she kept repeating what her mom said. 'I'll go first.' For children, when a parent says they'll come back and doesn't, the feeling of safety collapses. I don't know if Emily had a premonition, but the way she spoke, it felt like goodbye."
Emily gave Jason's hand a soft squeeze. She kissed Lily's forehead, cold as snow, and then stood. She walked forward, leaving a trail of faint footprints across the soft white ice, her white boots fading into the weak light cast by the flashlights. The camera kept rolling, silent and still, capturing everything. The swish of her coat in the breeze, the deep breath she took before stepping up to the cross-shaped hole carved into the frozen river. Before the ritual's official moment, before speaking a single word on camera, Emily looked back. Not just at David, not just at the kids, but with eyes that seemed to carve a final message into each of their hearts. No one asked, "Are you sure?" No one tried to stop it. Because in their hearts, if Emily had that much faith, then this had to be safe. But the ritual didn't care that there were no medics nearby. It didn't care how deep the river ran. It didn't ask whether this woman, this wife, this mother was anything more than just a believer, alone in winter. Emily stepped beyond the camera's frame, not into cleansing waters, but into the deepest place a human can fall, into the heart of blind faith. All her gentle promises, all her quiet warmth, became parting words. When Emily reached the edge of the ice, she took one last breath and made the sign of the cross over her chest. David stood still, frozen like an icicle. Jason gripped his sister's hand. The camera kept rolling. That moment was the last time everything was still whole. What came next was a jump, a plunge, and a silence that sank beneath the surface, taking with it something none of them could have ever imagined.
I still remember the sound of the silence, right after Emily jumped in. Not ordinary silence, but that kind of screaming silence, like the forest itself was holding its breath.
That's what David Walker, Emily's husband, told me months after the incident. We sat in a dimly lit living room, the air warm but heavy. His voice cracked like ice under pressure. Some memories don't soften with time. They only sink deeper. The wind still whistled through the snow-covered trees. The camera kept rolling, its lens unblinking, and Emily stood there, a few seconds from stepping into the handmade cross-shaped hole in the ice her family had carved just hours earlier. She paused, closed her eyes, then made the sign of the cross over her chest. And then, in a single, graceful motion, full of faith, she stepped forward and vanished into the ink-black water beneath the ice. 1, 2, 3 seconds. Everything stopped. The entire forest seemed to shrink into itself, like something invisible had tightened around it. There was no splash, no ripples, no sign of Emily rising up, like they had always seen in church rituals before. Jason was the first to scream, "Mom! Mom!" His voice shattered across the snow, bouncing off frost-covered trees. Lily lunged toward her father, clinging to his arm. David dropped his scarf and bolted for the edge of the hole, his flashlight flickering wildly across the frozen surface, and then he stopped. "I felt my feet sliding," he said, as if something beneath the ice was trying to pull me in too. That moment, I knew, if I jumped, it wouldn't just be two kids without their mom. They'd lose their dad too. David trembled, not just from the cold, but from the memory. He crouched near the ice, scanning every inch beneath the surface, but there was nothing, just that deep, motionless black. No air bubbles, no sound, no silhouette rising back up.
When I arrived on scene, the camera was still running. We reviewed the footage right there. The moment Emily Walker vanished was just that, a clean jump. No visible errors, good lighting, clear frame, but no exit path. That ice hole, it was an entry, not an exit.
David called for help. Emergency teams and local volunteers were deployed that same night. They brought drills, thermal scanners, submersible cameras. But the ice here was unusually thick, and beneath it, the current was fast, pulling toward the riverbed. Everyone quickly realized this wasn't a peaceful lake like they'd assumed. It was a death current. One rescue worker whispered, she could have been swept hundreds of meters away, in under a minute. Jason was pulled from the scene by a trauma counselor within minutes. He had mild hypothermia and early signs of shock. He clutched his mother's scarf tightly, his eyes never leaving the ice. Lily didn't speak. She only asked one question. How long until Mommy comes back up? No one could answer. No one believed in miracles. On the camera's screen, time kept ticking, second by second, minute by minute. Each frame, now a record, a testimony, of faith, of final moments, of a departure with no goodbye. No cry loud enough would ever call Emily Walker back. Emily never resurfaced. What remained were footprints, a final glance, and faith betrayed by the very nature she trusted most. And before those emotional ashes could settle, her family had to face the hardest truth of all, that their wife, their mother, their spiritual guide, had vanished forever, right in front of the very camera she had set up to preserve a sacred cleansing.
I still remember that strange feeling when I stepped out onto the frozen river that day. Something wasn't right. The cold wasn't just winter's cold. It felt like your soul had been frozen too.
By the time rescue crews arrived, the beams of their flashlights danced weakly across the ice. The forest was completely still, as if even it had stopped breathing. In that thick, unnatural silence, every sign pointed to one grim truth. Emily Walker had vanished beneath the frozen water, and there was no way back. Her family hadn't realized, or hadn't fully understood, that the Epiphany ritual held each year by the church was carefully planned, with certified ice thickness, medical staff, and trained safety crews always on hand. But this year, they had chosen something very different. A remote section of the Naraqua River, visibly calm on the surface, but secretly cut through by an underground current moving westward fast enough to drag a full-grown adult within seconds.
I've pulled people from frozen lakes, ice wells, even glacier cracks. But that part of the Naraqua where Emily jumped, it's notorious. One small misstep, and the current can pull you 100 feet away. It's not that they were reckless. They just didn't know. They thought it was a frozen lake, but it was actually a gash in the earth. A river deep enough to drown you 8 times over.
The ice that day looked thick, but it was only a fragile sheet floating above volatile, fast-moving water. David and Emily had carved out a cross-shaped hole themselves, in line with tradition, but they hadn't checked the depth, the strength of the current, or made any emergency preparations. When Emily jumped into that black water, they didn't know it was a one-way trip. A diver later said, without safety ropes and surface markers, being swept away was almost guaranteed. The undercurrent spins beneath the ice, and there's no place to rise back up. After stepping away from the hole, David shakily called emergency services. The 911 call was logged at 7:16 p.m., just 4 minutes after Emily jumped. Rescuers arrived half an hour later, but all they found was darkness, a biting wind, and a camera still recording, capturing a father and 2 children sitting silently, backs pressed together, staring into the hole in the ice. There was nothing left to say.
Jason had mild hypothermia and was emotionally unresponsive. The girl, Lily, was silent. Her lips had turned purple. Even after we wrapped her in thermal blankets, she couldn't feel her hands. When we asked questions, she only said, "Mom stayed under the water to make the prayer work. Right."
It took over 3 days for search teams to expand the area, cutting 12 new holes along the river's path. They used thermal scanners and underwater drones, but no trace of Emily. Police later issued a formal classification: presumed drowned, body unrecovered due to strong river current. On the 5th day, a prayer note Emily had written was found on a chair near the camera. The handwriting was shaky but steady. "Lord, please hear me. And if my body falters, let my spirit rise." Her physical body may have been carried far downstream, hundreds of meters depending on the current. But what tore at the people left behind wasn't just the lack of closure, it was when and how she vanished, in the exact moment they trusted most, when faith, reverence, and love were placed entirely into a sacred act, and the world gave nothing back.
I don't blame my sister. She just wanted something good for her family. It's just that sometimes this world doesn't wait for us to be ready.
It's strange. Since that night, the Walker family never returned to their old house. Joanne Matthews, a neighbor who lived beside Emily for 12 years, house number 47 on Highland Street, now sits under a blanket of dust and time. A for sale sign leans unevenly by the walkway, and the window where Emily once hung Christmas lights now reflects only a hollow kind of darkness. After the tragedy, David Walker packed up and left, taking his 2 children with him, 2 innocent witnesses to the moment their entire world caved in. No more pancake mornings, browned by Emily's careful hands. No more piano songs, drifting into lazy Sunday afternoons. Everything was left behind, frozen under the ice near the edge of the Naraqua forest.
I remember clearly when Emily called, he said. She told me she wanted to do the Epiphany ritual with just her family this year. She said she wanted the kids to experience faith in a way that felt purer, more personal. I told her, if you're not going with the church, at least choose a safe location. She laughed gently, and said, God will be there with us.
Faith, for some people, is the only light they have left when the rest of the world turns cold. But when that light fades beneath a frozen river, the people left behind are forced to wander through a gray space filled with questions. Questions no one can truly answer. Why did David, normally calm and cautious, allow his wife and children to step into such a dangerous ritual without proper safety checks? And why did Emily, the one her friends called the family's voice of reason, believe the ice in the woods could carry the full weight of both faith and fear?
She went through an incredibly rough year, lost her father to COVID. She kept talking about renewal, especially spiritual renewal. At first I thought she meant meditation, maybe reading scripture. I never imagined she meant plunging into a frozen river.
After Emily's body was never found, the legal file was provisionally closed under the classification. Disappearance under extreme conditions, 0 chance of survival. But those who lived alongside Emily, they couldn't close the emotional chapter that easily. Jason no longer spoke about baseball, a sport he once adored playing with his mom. Lily drew constantly, but every picture was painted in cold tones, purples, ashen blues, diluted grays, and there was one haunting pattern. Not a single one included a woman. The cold from the Naraqua River had crept into even the warmest corners. Motherhood, the sense of safety, and the meaning of faith itself. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, you now know more than most people ever will about what happened in that break room. But the story isn't over. There's still the basement, the notebooks, and the one question no one can answer. Why? Subscribe to the Inkpath if you haven't already, and don't miss what comes next. New episodes every Tuesday and Friday. I'm Leon Graves. I'll see you in the next one.